In this section, we are going to talk about multi-area OSPF. In the first chapter, we are going to talk about the multi-area OSPF overview, and after we'll talk about multi-area OSPF configuration. In OSPF, a single autonomous system can be divided into smaller groups called areas. This reduces the number of link state advertisements and other OSPF overhead traffic sent on the network, and it also reduces the size of the topology database that each router must maintain. Let's take a look to the multi-area OSPF first. Multi-area OSPF provides us smaller the link state database, smaller the routing table, and rare SPF calculations because if there is a topology change in an area, that stays only that area, and SPF calculation is made just for the area related, and that's suitable for large-scale designs. In multi-area OSPF, other areas must connect to area 0 by area border routers. As you can see that we have two area border routers which are connecting to area 50 to area 0 and area 60 to area 0, and they are router 2 and router 3. That's a suitable solution for large networks to decrease processing overhead, as I told you before. And for example, if the link between router 8 and router 9 is down, that means if there's a problem in an area, the area border router for this area, which is router 2 for this, isolates the fault, and so just area 50 is affected from failure and makes the SPF recalculation, and no SPF recalculation is made for this area, for example. And here is the autonomous system boundary router. Autonomous system boundary router exchanges routing information with routers belonging to other AS. This is the autonomous system boundary router, and we have another domain which can be an internet or other routing protocol domain, and that's the autonomous system boundary router, which makes the exchanging routing information with other routers belonging to internet or other protocol domain. So let's take a look to the OSPF LSA types. That's an important thing. We have 7 types of LSAs in OSPF. LSA 1 is known as the router LSA. That's generated by all routers to describe directly attached links. And router LSAs stay in the area that I created in. Secondly, we have network LSA. This type of LSA is generated by designated router to describe the neighbors connected to that segment. And please keep in mind that this LSA does not leave the area 2. We have LSA type 3 and 4, which are generated by ABR to describe a route to ASPR to neighbors outside the area. And we have also external LSA, and this is generated by autonomous system boundary router to describe routes to redistributed into area. And we have also multicast LSA and NSSA external LSA 2, which are not in the scope of our CCNA exam. Let's take a look to the OSPF routing table 2. As you know from our practical labs, O means OSPF, when you type show IP route OSPF, or when you type show IP route, you can see the entry is beginning with O, which means OSPF. And you can also see in a multi-area OSPF network something like that. This is IA, which represents inter-area. That means this is an OSPF route, and this route is learned from another area. So that represents inter-area. And you can see the E1 and E2 routes too. Type E1 and E2 routes represent the external routes redistributed into our OSPF area. So let's take a look to the OSPF summarization now. You guys should be remembering this perhaps from our previous sections. Process of summarizing subnets into a larger subnet to be advertised to upstream routers for ease of management and troubleshooting and resource conservation is route summarization, as you know. In OSPF, just ABR and ASPR routers can summarize the routes. Please keep in mind that that's an important point. So let's see that OSPF inter-area route summarization, how it's making. And ABRs can summarize the routes within an area to ASBR. As you can see that we have two networks in here, and we have two networks in here too as well. Our area border router can summarize these two routes and represent them with a just single route. And the same thing in here too. And here is the OSPF inter-area route summarization continuing. And we have ASPRs can summarize also, as we told that. ASPRs can summarize many external routes into one LSA. ASPRs can learn routes from here and can summarize them into a one LSA. Here is the configuration of the multi-area OSPF. We are gonna take a look to the multi-area OSPF version 2 configuration, which is used at IPv4 now. To make the configuration, first we are getting into the config router mode, but by typing router OSPF and our process ID, then we define our router ID, then we type our network statements. We are in router 2, and as you can see that router 2 has two different networks to advertise. The first network belongs to area 50. The second one belongs to area 0. And we are typing that 50.0 belonging to area 50 and 26.0 is belonging to area 0. Configuration is pretty straightforward and really has no difference from the single area OSPF configuration. Just the area names are changing, as you can see. And to set the multi-area OSPF version 3 configuration up, that's the similar logic with the IPv4 configuration again. We are getting into the router OSPF and process ID and we are getting into the configurator mode. And please keep in mind that we are just defining a router ID while we are configuring IP version 6 for OSPF. And then we are getting into the interfaces and enabling OSPF for them using the correct area numbers. As you can see that gig 00 is belonging to area 50. As you can see in here, gig 00 is in area 50 and gig 01 is in area 0. And here's how we can configure the route summarization for area border routers. As you can see that we have two routes connected to router 2, and I'm gonna summarize these two routes using just one route. To make the summarization process, I'm getting into the router OSPF 1, and in the configurator mode, I'm typing area 50 that the routes will be summarized belong to, and I'm using range command that represents I'm using summarization, and I'm using these routes into this route, and I'm using this prefix that I want to other routes summarized as. And to verify OSPF configurations, I'm using show IP protocols, show IP route, route OSPF, neighbors, database, and interface commands. And we are using IPv6 instead of IP to verify OSPF version 3 configurations. Alright guys, we are at the end of the multi-area OSPF session 2 and thanks for viewing.